Hello, my name is Lila Rafai. I'm a staff lawyer at Arch Disability Law Center, and I thank you for joining us. We wish to begin this webinar by acknowledging the land we are all on, which has been home to Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. As we deliver this training from our office in Toronto, we acknowledge that for thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live on this land. We give gratitude for the generations that have come before and for the creatures on the land. Hello, and welcome to this Arch Disability Law Center webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. As mentioned, my name is Lila Rafai. I am the bilingual staff lawyer at Arch Disability Law Center. The session today will provide you with an overview of Arch's services and how we support people with disabilities across Ontario in navigating their legal rights. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available on Arch's website and YouTube channel after the session. For accessibility purposes, we have automatic captions enabled and is available if you need it. And an ASL interpreter is present throughout the presentation. To keep the focus on the content, participant chat, microphones, and cameras have been turned off. If you experience any technical issues during this session, please reach out to our Community Education and Outreach Coordinator, Jessica, at jessica.field@arch.clcj.ca. So I could spell out that email address for you as well. So it's JESSIE@arch.clcj.ca. So with that, all housekeeping taken care of, let's get into the topic of the day. So what we're going to be talking about throughout the session is essentially giving you an introduction of Arch Disability Law Center, who we are, for those of you who may not be aware of Arch, and as well giving you a brief overview or description of what we do generally and what kind of legal services we can give to persons with disabilities across the province. I will also describe what Arch's areas of practice are, which are essentially what areas of the law that we focus on. And finally, we'll talk a bit about how you can contact Arch if you have any a legal issue that you want to talk to us about or you need legal advice. So for those who may not be aware of who Arch is, so Arch Disability Law Center is a disability rights legal clinic located in Toronto, Ontario. Arch is dedicated to defending and advancing the equality rights, entitlements, fundamental freedoms and inclusion of low-income persons with disabilities across Ontario. We are primarily funded by Legal Aid Ontario. So essentially, we assist persons with disabilities who are residents of Ontario, even though our office or our physical office is in Toronto. We do provide services to people across the province. And if you want to know a bit more information about ARCH, including our history and the past work that we've done, or any other information you want to know about ARCH, you can visit our website. Our website is www.archdisabilitylaw.ca. So there are a few things that ARCH does to really bring in some changes for persons with disabilities across Ontario. And I will talk a bit more in detail of all of these, but just to give you the brief overview before we get into the details. One thing that we do provide is summary advice and referral service, basically legal advice and referrals directly to persons with disabilities anywhere in Ontario. And I'll go into a bit more details shortly about what this service means and what we can actually do through this service. But just to give you a brief highlight is that it's basically that we have staff lawyers at ARCH that can provide legal advice within the areas of practice of ARCH. Another part of what we do is that we also provide legal representation to persons with disabilities. And legal representation means essentially that we represent people in either a court or a tribunal in their case. There are a couple of, we'll go into details as to when we can represent somebody and when we can't, but that's just one of the things as well that we can provide. And beyond legal advice and going to court or going to a tribunal, we also work a lot in law reform and policy changes. These are different kinds of projects that is not about going to court, but a different way to bring some changes or make the laws better for persons with disabilities. And finally, we also provide rights education to communities, persons with disabilities, including workshops and some materials for people to refer to learn about their rights. So I will now get into really talking about the first category of things that we do, which is probably the most relevant one for individuals with disabilities, and that's our summary advice and referral service. So this is a service that we provide. It's free and confidential legal advice. It's on a very specific legal issue that a person with disability may have. The issue itself or the legal problem has to be a problem within ARCH's areas of practice, and I will go explain those shortly, what those areas of practice are. But if you're a person with disability and you have a legal issue that is within the areas of practice, then we can give you free and confidential legal advice. The service is usually done over the phone, the advice usually over the phone, unless, because of your disability, you can't contact us or communicate by phone, then we could accommodate your needs and provide that service in a different way. For example, we could provide legal advice through email, or some people may need Zoom to be able to meet with a lawyer and get legal advice. Other times it could be in person. It really depends on the person's accommodation needs. But generally speaking, it is done by telephone. And as I was just mentioning it, so if the person cannot call us for disability-related reasons, as I mentioned, there are other ways to access the service. And if the issue or the problem that you're having, that you're calling Arch about, is not something that is within our areas of practice, that's okay. The only thing that we will be able to do is try to find a referral for you, which basically try to find another, the correct place for you to call or contact to get the help that you're looking for, if it's not something that we can give advice on. This service, the summary advice and referral service, is provided both in English and in French as well. It's also available in French. As my title suggested earlier, I am a bilingual staff lawyer, which means we do have some capacity to provide legal services in French as well as in English. And just to give you a general idea of what to expect when you contact Arch and you want to get legal advice about your legal issue. The first thing to remember is that we cannot talk to someone other than the person with a disability that is directly has the problem, right? So if your friend calls on your behalf and you're not with them to talk to us, we can't talk to your friend. We have to speak to you as the individual with disability directly. That's why, if your friend or a family member calls for you, we will usually tell them what we need the person to call us. So it is a service that is provided directly to the person with disability. Unless that other person has a valid guardianship or power of attorney that allows them to speak on that person's behalf. But even when there is one in place, we generally prefer, or at least ask, if the person with disability can also be on the phone, or at least be part of the discussion about their legal problem. So the process, or what to expect when you contact Arch for a summary advice and referral service, is essentially you would go through our intake process. So let's say you call Arch, and you would then first speak with our intake coordinator at Arch. And that intake coordinator will take down some information about you, about your issue, as well as some information about you, like your name, your phone number, and stuff like that. And while talking with the intake coordinator, the intake coordinator will then figure out if it's a legal problem or an issue that Arch can help you with. Basically, is it an issue that is within our areas of practice, or is it something that we have to give a referral to you to contact someone that could help you? So let's say your legal problem is something that Arch can help you with, or can give you some advice on. What the intake coordinator will then do is schedule a telephone appointment with an Arch staff lawyer, usually on another day. So unless it's an urgent issue or an urgent matter. but it's usually, within a couple of days, you would get the appointment, or you would have your appointment with an Arch staff lawyer. And whether it's the actual appointment with the lawyer will usually also be by phone. Again, if there are any accommodation needs from the individual, if they cannot communicate by phone, then it'll be with the appointment will happen however meets their accommodation needs. And then during at the appointment time and day with the staff lawyer, the lawyer will generally call the person at the time that is set by the appointment, and that's when you get to talk more details about the legal problem, and the lawyer will then be able to give you some legal advice about what to do. So as long as you are a person with a disability, you are residing in Ontario, the legal problem happened in Ontario and is within the areas of practice that we do, then at that point, Arch can give you some advice. So even though we are primarily funded by Legal Aid Ontario, you don't need to be financially eligible for legal aid to access our summary advice and referral service. Now, one thing that this service does not include is that we don't review or draft documents or letters on behalf of a client through the summary advice and referral service. It's really just about providing legal advice. And we don't also communicate with third parties on behalf of the client through this service. For any of that kind of work, we would have to be representing the person directly to be able to do more than just legal advice. And we're going to talk about that right now, about what that means to have legal representation, because there's a bit more more criteria that come into play when we're talking about legal representation from Arch. So essentially what legal representation means is that Arch would become your lawyer for your specific problem, right? They are representing you, they can help you, or they write documents, we'll write documents for you, stuff like that. So there is particular eligibility criteria that Arch has to look at because unfortunately we can't represent everybody, although we wish we could. It's not possible. So we do have a call it case selection process, where essentially we helps us to determine what cases Arch can provide representation on and what cases we cannot provide representation on. So there are a few factors that Arch looks at when deciding whether we can represent somebody. The main very first factor is that essentially the case has to be what we call a test case, or also known as a precedent-setting case. What this means is that the case is the case or the legal issue is not just a problem for one person, but there's many people across, either Ontario or many people with disabilities that are affected by that same issue or a similar issue. And this case, the case in particular, will potentially change the law or change a policy in a positive way for to better the rights of persons with disabilities in Ontario. So it's really to improve, all the rights for persons with disabilities. Um, and that's really what we're talking about when we talk about test case. Another way of also thinking it is that it's also could be a case that it's an issue that has never been heard before. It's a new issue that there is nothing in the law about it. That could also be considered a test case. So that's the major part of the eligibility that we look at, or one of the major factors. And it goes to the mandate that ARCH has of really advancing the rights of persons with disabilities across the province. The other factors that we look at when we're looking at whether we can represent somebody in a case is whether there's merits to the case. So, for example, the case is going to be successful or not at the court or tribunal. We also look at what are the actual issues, if there's anything, what is systemic about the case. So what is the issue or the possible outcome that could change the rights or in a positive way for persons with disabilities in Ontario. And we also look at, of course, ARCH's resources to take on another case. And then finally, we also look at a particular additional factor that is not considered for summary advice and referrals, but is considered for legal representation, which is financial eligibility to legal aid services. So, as I mentioned earlier, ARCH is funded or primarily funded by Legal Aid Ontario. And because of that, when we are representing or you're representing a person, that person has to be financially eligible to legal aid. Whether someone is financially eligible or not to legal aid depends on a lot of things, but mostly their income, how many people are in their household, etc. So that is something that we have to consider for legal representation as well. So just to summarize, for the legal advice, if you just need legal advice, we don't look at the income, we don't look at financial eligibility. For if you need legal representation by ARCH, then that is one of the things that we have to assess and look at when determining if we can represent somebody. And finally, there is also another aspect of representation that we sometimes do, and that's what we call brief services, which essentially there are times that we are able to represent a client, specifically if we're for a small task in their issue, or to help them resolve the small issue. Like, for example, to contact a service provider on their behalf, or to write a letter for someone, for them. So these brief services also have a few factors that we have to look into, including the financial eligibility of the person to Legal Aid Ontario, and as well the merits and what the issue is. So in order to reach to request, if you want to request legal representation, you do still go through our summary advice and referral service first. So usually you would get an appointment with a lawyer, with an ARCH lawyer, to talk about your case before, and you would get some legal advice as well, and then the discussion could then turn on whether it's something that ARCH can represent on or not. So those are the two main things that ARCH provides for persons with disabilities. Um, and in terms of legal service, direct legal services to persons with disabilities. And I do want to spend a bit of time going through the areas of practice at Arch, because I think it's important as well to know what we can do and what we can't do. Um, and these areas of practice are informed by our communities and our board of directors at Arch, and as well are informed by other services that are available for persons with disabilities as well, so that we don't duplicate services, basically. So the first area of practice, or I'll say area of law, that we do and that we can give advice on or some help is accessibility laws. And when we're talking about accessibility laws, we're talking about the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, also known as the AODA, and the Accessible Canada Act, also known as the ACA. The AODA is the accessibility law in Ontario that applies in Ontario under the province jurisdiction, meaning under the province's control, whereas the ACA, it applies across the country, across Canada, including Ontario, but it's only for federal companies and service providers like banks, planes, the federal government, Service Canada, for example, as well. So we could give some help or advice on accessibility laws if that's an issue you have. We also give a practice in education law as it relates specifically to students with disabilities. And more specifically in education law, we can help with if a student was suspended or expelled for disability-related reasons or because of their disability. Also, if a student is excluded because of their disability or are going through have shortened days at school. And of course, we also can give advice or help with understanding the IPRC process and the IEP process at school. And particularly for the IEP process, IPRC, that is part of the accommodation process at school, the K-12 school we talked about here, and really about if a student with disability needs some accommodations at school, then they usually go through the IEP process. So we can give some advice and help about navigating that, or if there's any issues that are happening in that area. We also gave advice or help in issues related to transportation. Again, specific to, has to be specific to disability. And when we're talking about transportation, we're talking including municipal transportation like city bus, paratransit, accessible transportation. We're also talking about provincial types of transportation in Ontario. And usually in Ontario, for the most part, it's just buses, but it's a bus that would go from a city to another city, right? But stay inside the province of Ontario. So those are considered provincial transportation. And also we do give advice on federal transportation, which could be airplanes, trains, buses that basically they cross the border, whether they go from province to province or they go into like airplanes travel to different countries as well. But again, the issue itself for federal transportation or anything else has to have happened in Ontario. And we also give advice and help on what we call decision-making rights for persons with disabilities. And more specifically on our focus is on informing people with disabilities about their right to make their own decisions. This includes information about supported decision-making. We can also help if the person is under the care of the public guardian trustee and they're having issues with the public guardian trustee, or PGT for short, as it's also known by. So we can help people to, if they're having issues with them. We also give advice or help with removing a guardianship. So if someone has a guardianship over them, as in someone else is making a decision on their behalf, that person with disability can contact us for help or advice about how to remove that guardianship. Or if they have, or if someone is trying to get guardianship on them, we can help or give advice about how they can stop that from happening. So, and we also give advice or help on how to revoke a power of attorney. So how to cancel a power of attorney for that person with disability. And it's important to very specifically note here that because we take the position of removal of guardianship and removals of power of attorneys, that means we do not give advice or help with creating a guardianship. We don't give advice on those kind of things, mainly because we are focused on removing guardianships as opposed to putting them in place. So if you are asking for help to put a guardianship on someone else, that wouldn't be something that we would be able to help you with, and would have to give you a referral. We also give advice on home care and attendant services. This is where a personal support worker or PSW would come to your home and provide you with personal care according to a care plan. And it's usually done through the Ontario Health at Home, as it's now known, or through any third-party agencies that work with Ontario Health at Home. So the kind of help, or some examples of the help that we can give in if you're having an issue with home care or attendant services, it includes, if you applied with Ontario Health at Home for services and they denied you, they said that they're not going to give you the services, then you could call us for advice or help. Or if you are already receiving services from them and your services got reduced for whatever reason, then you can also contact us to get some help about or advice on what to do about that. And as well, we also do give some advice or help if you're having issues with the level of the quality of the care that's provided by the PSWs through Ontario Health at Home or the third-party agency. We also do give advice or help in issues related to developmental services, which includes passport funding, or if you're having an issue at the group homes, if you're residing at a group home and you're having issues with the services that the group home is supposed to be providing you. then you could give us, you could contact Arch as well for advice or help on what to do next. And we also give some limited advice or information when it comes to direct funding as well through the DSO program. And finally, the other, I guess, more catch-all area or major area that we do practice in, that's human rights and discrimination based on disability. However, it is important to note that we only do help with human rights and discrimination in very select areas. That means that we unfortunately cannot give advice on discrimination in all areas, but the ones that we can give advice and help with are listed on the slide. So the first one is if you're being discriminated when you're trying to access services. That's something we could give advice or help with. If you are trying to get accommodations at work and either you're being denied or you have questions about that process, you can contact Arch for some advice as well in that, but only if you are not part of a union. So if you are part of a union at your job, then you would need to speak with your union representative. We would not be able to give advice if you have a union or if you're a part of a union. But if you are not unionized, then we could definitely give you advice about that. We also do focus on discrimination in primary and secondary education. So K-12 education, if you're a student and you're being discriminated, or especially particularly primary education, if you're a parent and your child is a student with disability and they're being discriminated against, you can contact us. And we also do focus on post-secondary education and discrimination. So post-secondary meaning college and university. So if you are a student at a college or university and you are either being denied accommodations at school or being discriminated by the college or university, then we could also give you advice or help in that area. And finally, if you're being discriminated because of your guide dog or service animal, we can also give you advice in that about that. So that's really what we just described as what Arch does do. But I do want to spend a couple of seconds here with giving you some examples of what we don't do, what we can't help you with. And the reason I want to do this is that we do get a lot of these calls and questions. And I believe even before this session, there was a lot of questions that also came up during registration about whether we can do one area or another area. So I did want to give just a list of what some things that we don't help with, but just note that it's not everything that we can't do. There is a lot more areas. These are the more common ones that we hear at intake. So I mentioned this before, but we can't help with getting guardianship over someone else. That's not something that we do. We also do not do civil litigation, meaning suing someone at court for damages or contracts or stuff like that. That's not something that Arch has any expertise in, and we don't practice in. We also cannot help with family law issues. And we also do not help with criminal law as well. So if someone's arrested or has an issue with the criminal sector, we cannot assist with that. And we also do not help with housing issues. And this is probably one of the bigger ones, of the more common ones that we get. So if you are a tenant and you're getting discrimination, you're facing discrimination or have other issues with your landlord, or you're a landlord and you're getting discriminated against, or even if you're a condo owner and you're having issues with the condo board, or the condo board of directors. If it's related to housing, whether even if it's disability related, even if it's discrimination, unfortunately, that's not something that we could provide legal advice or help with. But we do for family law, criminal, housing. There are lots of community legal clinics available, or legal aid also has other services available, so we can still provide you with referrals for that. Other examples of what we can't help with, issues relate to ODSP, Ontario Works. If you have an issue with CPP disability, it's also something that we cannot assist with. Short-term or long-term disability as well. Personal injury cases. Unfortunately, we don't do personal injury. We also don't practice in insurance law, and we don't do class actions either. So this is just some examples of what we don't do. However, having said that, if you are not sure if it's something that ARCH can help you with, or you're not sure who to call to help you with these issues, with an issue that's something that we can't do, you can still contact ARCH. We can try to find a referral for you. Basically, we can try to help you find someone or the right place to call, right? If we can't help. So so even though these are issues that we can't help you with, we could still refer you to someone that may be able to help you with instead. So just gonna briefly talk about as well the other aspects of ARCH's work, for your information as well. As beyond legal services or direct legal services to persons with disabilities, we also do law reform and policy work. And usually that's done in partnerships with organizations representing communities of persons with disabilities, or coalitions of organizations, so many organizations together. And essentially, law reform work is about changing the law, but not through litigation, not through going to court, not through a judge, but really more about advocating with the government, advocating with decision makers about the changes that we should make, or that they should make. So this could include provincial work within Ontario. We also do some national work that could apply not only in Ontario, but may have implications across the country. And we also do a lot of international work as well, related specifically to human rights issues. We do on our website have a few of our past work in law reform, if you are interested in reading more about the work that we have done in the past. But some examples of law reform work that we have done in the past includes drafting submissions to the government about a new law that they want to pass, or these new policies that that they're looking to get some feedback from about how it would impact persons with disabilities. But you could definitely read about all of our past work in law reform on our website. And finally, we also provide rights education to persons with disabilities and the members of the public. Rights education really is about informing persons with disabilities and members of the public of their rights, and in a plain language manner as well. And we do this in different ways. We can provide workshops to communities, persons with disabilities. We also have quite a few rights education materials published on our website, and as well available in other formats if you request them for accessibility reasons. So all those materials are also available on our website. A lot of them are written documents, but we also have videos as well for persons with disabilities on various topics or legal topics. And there's also, we publish 2 to 3 times a year an Arch Alert newsletter, which essentially is a newsletter that provides updates on the law and on various topics as well, and as well different things that Arch is currently working on. The Arch Alert newsletter is also published on our website, or you can subscribe through our website to get an alert as to when they are released. And finally, for your information, we also do provide rights education materials to lawyers and paralegals, particularly about providing accessible legal services to their clients with disabilities, so that they can better serve persons with disabilities as well. So we do those kind of workshops, and we have education materials for lawyers and paralegals about their obligation to have an accessible legal practice, and how to make the justice system more accessible as well for persons with disabilities. And we also do provide free legal case consults to lawyers as well, in the same way of our summary advice and referral service, where lawyers and paralegals, if they're representing a person with disability and they are not sure about how to, or they have a question that came up with their case that's related to disability, and they're not sure what to do, then they can contact us to get a confidential case consult as well. But that's through lawyers that they would need to contact us directly. So if you have a lawyer in your case and you want them to contact Arch, then they would need to contact us directly. We wouldn't be able to call them on your behalf. They would have to call us directly. So now that we've covered a few aspects of what Arch does, I do have on this slide Arch's contact information, so that if you need any legal advice or legal help, how you can contact Arch. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it is generally done by phone. So our phone number is 416-482-8255. And we also have a toll-free phone number, which is 1-866-482-2724. And for those who would need to use our TTY to contact us, that phone number for TTY is 416-482-1254. And our TTY toll-free number is 1-866-482-2728. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you are unable to contact us by phone because of your disability, you can also email us at intake@arch.clcj.ca. I could spell that out for you. So the email address is INTAKE@arch.clcj.ca. If you do need to contact us by email as an accommodation, we just ask that just simply make a note that you need email as an accommodation when you do in your message to us, so that we know. So that's the end of this session today, and I do thank you all for joining us. If you want to take a moment to also complete our workshop survey, that would be greatly appreciated. And thank you so much, everybody.